Hello, everybody. Welcome. There are a few of you I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting. So I'm Robin. I am newly managing the Team 6 program at 6th and I. And all of you are in Team 6. So if you don't know each other already, familiarize yourselves with these faces. It's really lovely to have you. It's a beautiful evening. And I'm so excited to welcome Brocky and John. Brocky runs the social media account and company Whiskey and Kicks, where he interviews different people from around the DC cocktail scene. And I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. And John is a Team 6 member who has a passion for cocktails. He's a member of what's the association you're a member of?
It's the DC Craft Bartending Guild.
The DC Craft Bartending Guild. And he will bring to us the perspective of the history with Jews and liquor, whiskey specifically. So without further ado, I'm just gonna hand it over. So John, you'll start us off tonight.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the lovely introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry, pause. One more thing. Brocky wanted to, if people are okay with it, post this to his feed. But he only wants to do it if there's no one who's like, he doesn't want you to turn off your video just because you're not okay with it. So it's kind of an all or nothing. If you're not comfortable with that, you can just message me now. You can private message me and we won't do it. So I'll give everyone a second to ponder that. Go ahead and private message me if you want.
Yeah, I'm not gonna post it now. It would be later anyway, so.
Yeah. Give you a couple more seconds. All right, it seems like no one is opposed. That's great. Okay, John, go ahead.
Great. So thanks for the lovely introduction. First, I wanted to just give it a teeny bit more backstory on how I got to virtually meet Brocky. There is a recognition in a lot of the, amongst the DC Craft Bartending Guild, of the underrepresentation of people of color in some of the craft bartending community. And then Jack Rose, which is one of the largest whiskey places in the country, put on this great exhibition of tasting for charity. I was merely a participant in that. Brocky was not. He was deeply involved in it. And I learned about his organization through that recently and wanted to do what little I could to kind of reach out and help on a friendly level. And we weren't focusing on all the troubles that are going on today. I just bring, in what little way, the Jewish community and some of the bartending community and the African-American side together. I thought it'd just be a cool thing to do. So with that backstory told, I'm from McLean, Virginia, but my mom is from Louisville, Kentucky. And everyone who's involved with whiskey knows that bourbon has a very strong history. If it's not, considered the birthplace of American whiskey, and bourbon is Louisville. It's what it's known for, amongst horses and other things. Contrary to popular belief, and there's some great articles out there, one by The Atlantic, some on a number of other different sites, that really go into the documentation of Jewish history behind bourbon. And it really comes from two main areas. One, the almost, not the commandment to drink, but especially if you go back to the 1800s when it was more commonplace, there was knowledge that came from Eastern European on how to make liquor. And a lot of that, as people came from Eastern Europe for whatever the reason they were coming over at the time, they brought that knowledge with them. The other reason is it was not something that was set up by these white Anglo-Saxon Protestants or Catholics or anything like that nature, although there were some examples of it. It was actually a lot of Jews, because that was one of the few jobs they could have. There were a lot of jobs that frankly weren't allowed, as we know back then. And one of the things they were allowed to do was make whiskey. And so that's where you see Maker's Mark has some Jewish history behind it. Heaven Hill, my mom went to Hebrew school in Louisville with one of the people who worked there. So there's a lot of places that really have some pride behind it, and in bourbons, particularly in the US. So I wanted to just kind of bring that to attention, and you don't need to go through the whole long history of it, but it's worth noting. And then the other thing for tonight that I really wanted to touch on, and then we can dive into this a little bit more, is there's some really great science behind cocktails. It's not full-blown baking, and it's not exactly as much feel, in my opinion, as, you know, sauteing or cooking some of these high-end dishes that you might see at if you went to, you know, Michelin-starred restaurants. But there is really a lot of science between why you shake a drink, why you mix a drink. One of the most obvious ones when you see shaken versus stirred is the melting ratio of ice. So as you take a cocktail and you put it in that shaker and you're moving it back and forth really fast, what you're doing is with these smaller ice cubes is there's more going back and forth friction. Those things, they have less surface area, they're melting down faster, creates more water dilution into the drink as you're doing it. As opposed to when you're doing an old fashioned, which is the first drink I'm gonna get into here, what you're really going for is you're going for the slow spin, so you're not creating as much dilution. When you use one of the spears, and I have a spear that's mostly still in good shape, what you're doing is you have this larger surface area, causes a slower melt, which means that you have more of the original cocktail flavors that you're getting without any of the dilution that comes from a lot of crushed ice or a lot of small chunks of cubes. I have never been one personally to go with the whiskey stones. I know some people theoretically like them. I don't know anyone who particularly uses them. I'm sure there are some people who do. Rocky, I don't know your thoughts on them. I have 2 sets of them. I've never really gotten involved with them. But that's another way if you're looking to keep your drink chill without diluting it.
Not the biggest fan.
Yeah.
They warm up pretty fast.
Yeah. And the other thing that little advantage you get is there's questions about if you go to, you know, having really high end tasting and like snifters or stuff like that, little drops of water breaking up surface tension, bringing up other aromas into the air of cocktails. And there we go. You got one of those right there. Yeah. So I got mine right here, but mine actually has, well, this one doesn't have anything in it, but I have some that I've made my own bitters in, which is a giant pain in the ass. And I would, outside of doing it once, strongly discourage anyone from doing, unless you want to do it just for the fun of saying you've done something, because it's really a pain. It takes a couple weeks to a month to do it. A lot of attention, and you come out of it and you're like, I have three small bottles. Those bottles will last you forever, but it's a lot of effort for minimal gain when there are a lot of good people out there who are doing it. So as that said, I think I'm gonna just jump straight into the cocktail. That's why everyone's here. So let me see if I can put the chat real quick before I do that, because I can't see. Make for the people who are making me up.
What up?
So yeah, I move this chat over here so I can actually, so I can see it. But yeah, so what I'm gonna do is just make a pretty basic cocktail here. Old fashioned is one of the most simple, easy to make. Come home from your day, you don't need a lot of ingredients to make this. There's 1,000 different ways you can go with on variety. It actually doesn't have to be with bourbon or with rye. Rye is generally going to hold up a little bit better with some of the flavorings you're going to put in there than bourbon is. Bourbon's going to be a little bit sweeter. You're going to get maybe a little bit more of the one note with it than you are going to get with a rye. I have 2 bottles tonight that I just poured aside, but you could really use anything. I wouldn't recommend going with a high end like a Blanton's or a single barrel, something that's going to cost you 80, 90 bucks. But a lot of the mid-level stuff is going to be great here. Buffalo Trace is usually my go-to on this. You can get it at Costco for your DC people, or generally $35 a handle, which is an insane deal. Costco sells liquor in DC, so they have always a number of great bourbons you can get over at that warehouse. If you're looking to build up get some good bourbon at a reasonable price, that's a great place to start to have like your house bourbon kind of thing. So in the effort to make this a little DC based, I have some John Bowman, which is from Richmond, and this is another actual Jewish-owned organization. The guy has been pretty active in Jewish Federation in Richmond. So they have a single barrel. They do a lot of collaboration with, I forgot the name of the beer company down in Richmond that does all the super flavored beers.
I'm sorry, John. What whiskey was that again?
Oh, this is the John Bowman single barrel.
Bowman, yeah, Bowman Brothers is fantastic.
Yeah. So it's gonna probably, you might not find as much in DC. You might, it's gonna be about $40 at your ABC store in Virginia. If you happen to pop in there, they'll have it all over the place. But not super expensive, nice middle of the ground. The bottle looks nice. And I figured it felt with the form. The other one that I made tonight, that got tonight if I go rye, is the 1/8 Distilling, which I believe also has, I don't know for sure, but I believe they've done some work with Federation. I think they may also have some Jewish ownership in them as well. So I got that. And I'm just going to go dive into how I make a old fashioned. I was going to wing it a little bit. I know we had sent out recipes earlier, but what's the fun in actually following that to the T? So I'm going to take, I have a little thing right here. I do like to use it to measure to some degree because stronger cocktails are not necessarily better. What you're going for is the appropriate balance in your cocktail. And you can scale it up, scale it down, but you really do want to kind of maintain that balance because that's going to give you the flavor profile that you're looking for. So start, I'm going to go with a
question while John's doing this.
Yeah.
Hola, my question was just if we are gonna get all these awesome recommendations written down, because I understand every other word maybe, and I want to buy all of this and make all the cocktails.
Yeah, I'm sure we
Yeah,
can
we
get
can make
John
that. We just get it
to
you.
write this out. And
Thank
I'll send it around.
Is this an appropriate measuring
Yeah,
vessel? Okay, so it's what we have on hand.
it's great. You gotta change it up. You know, whatever you got going on. Your standard shot glass is going to be about 2 ounces, give or take a little bit. You just fill it to the brim, maybe a teeny bit more. So I'm going to put, if you have one of these traditional, measuring things here, I'm going to go 2 of the big ones, 1 at the bottom, or you could just fill that up to about 3 ounces. Whatever it is, if you have, whatever it is for you, works. I'm going to take. Now I'm going to take some of my simple syrup. Simple syrup is incredibly easy to make, and there's a ton that you can do with it. You can also do a bunch of flavored ones. So if you want to put a little herbs or something like that into your simple syrup while you're heating it up, it's going to really infuse that flavor into your simple syrup and create some really nice aromas as you do it. So everything from basil to whatever you want from aromatics is going to be great. I have one here that I picked up recently they have a ancient candy store in Harper's Ferry, and I happened to pick this up there, but it's just basically a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar and water. I like the demura, the darker sugar, or agave. I think you get more floral notes in that, and that's really great in an old fashioned. I think when you go with the straight white sugar, it's one note, it's kind of boring. It's a little bit syrupy. It's still okay, but I prefer the other stuff. So I'm gonna just dump that straight in there. And then the next part is to just grab some bitters. So whatever you have, Angostura is
The syrup. The ratio of the syrup.
I generally do. I probably put a little too much in there, but I probably go about say a 1/2 ounce to 3 ounces of whiskey. But put however much you in if you want a little bit sweeter. It's like any kind of cooking thing. You can go. You can always add more if it's not enough. You obviously can't take stuff out of it. An overly sweet old fashioned actually isn't the worst thing in the world. So, Brocky, what are your thoughts on that? I think you're on mute.
I agree. I never go over an ounce of sugar. usually a half an ounce. And I also like brown sugar. It gives it more body, and the flavor is just amazing with the brown sugar.
Mm-hmm. So I have right here some Hella bitters from Brooklyn. There's Angostura is actually OU, so that means it's kosher for. So that's a good one to go to. But whatever bitters that you find, I've heard that Bittermans and a couple other companies have some hextures on them. So it depends on your level of how much you care about those things to whether what options you're going to have on the table. So I'm going to put in about three to four good dashes of the Angostura, or the aromatic as it's called if you're not buying it by that brand. It's kind of like Kleenex versus tissues. Angostura is a particular kind of standard bitter, and aromatic is more of your standard name there for it. I'm also going to throw in a little bit of this chocolate mole one, which I happen to like, from Bittermans. It's a big bottle. You can get this one over at Salt and Sundry. If you're looking for where to get, they have a really, really great bitter selection. If you're looking to go dive deep in it, Schneider's has some good stuff, but Salt and Sundry is easy to get to for a lot of people in the DuPont and other areas. So highly recommended there. I'm gonna put like 2 to 3 of the little drops from this thing in there. Just put it in. I'm gonna now put like a dash of Reagan's, which is another very traditional, very well-known bitter. You can find this pretty much anywhere. This is an orange bitter. They're gonna bring out a little bit of sweetness in it. I don't actually have, I should have bought an orange. I don't have any citrus on me right now. What would be a traditional thing to do is to cut just the peel off. If it, not getting the rind, you're gonna get a lot of nice oils from it. You would wanna wipe right around the rim. You'd wanna wipe it right here, get some of those fresh oils on the edge. So as you're drinking it, you're gonna get that nice aroma. And then you could do a nice little twist over at the end there if you had one. I just forgot to do that. But there's so many different ways that you can go about this that there's not really a wrong way to make an old fashioned. For the most part. I'm gonna throw I found some blueberries in my fridge. So it looks like that's okay to go with. So I'm gonna throw a couple blueberries in it just because I feel like it. It's not really a traditional thing. And then I actually have some, where do I have some else in here that I'm looking to? I'll use these right here.
Blueberry, wow.
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like doing that. I found them there. I'm like, I have some, I have a sour cherry too. I have some bourbon cherries, but I don't know where in the fridge they are right now. So instead of diving through them in front of y'all, I'm just gonna grab 2 sour cherries, throw it in there. These are from, I believe I don't know if she still is, but she has been involved in Team 6 in the past, Julia Krantz. So shout out to her. And gonna muddle this up a teeny bit, even though this is not we're getting less traditional in this, but I'm just muddling it up a little bit to break up, get some of the fruit there. It's almost come more of a smash when I do that. But you still got the same basic ingredients in there. And now, I'm gonna take my Death Star ice cube mold here, just drop it in there and stir it a couple times. Now, people may not realize, but there is a real science behind making ice. So if you go to these places that have the clear ice, it's a lot harder than it looks. It gets into impurities, the way water freezes. That water, when you start in that top-down process, and why the top is going to have a lot of the impurities in it. So if you're looking at some of these fancy ice blocks that you're getting at these restaurants, they have to actually cut off the top by hand often, or they're using a much more scientific process to get a really good freeze and clean water out of it. It's not having the impurities that we're getting from our tap. I haven't had great experience making purely clean ice, perfectly clear ice, but it is doable. I'm guessing if you use more of a distilled water, you'd probably have better luck. Have you done that? Have you ever played around with that or?
The distilled water is what I heard, but I'm just not that interested in that project at home. I'll get the clear ice when I go to Jack Rose and Barrel and all those guys. And at home, I take it straight out the sink, put it in the freezer.
Yep. So I got a nice little long spoon here. Also a pretty cheap, cool looking barware. This one is, I forgot where I got this one. This might also be from Salt and Sundry. They have some really nice stuff. If you go to that, I'm gonna put that in the chat just so people. So they have some really nice stuff, and then you're good to go. You know, you try it, have a sip. If you want to mess around with it, throw a little more whiskey, a little more sugar, a little more bitters, whatever you want. You're good to go. So there you go. You got an old fashioned.
Nice. The John special. That's the rebellious old fashioned right there.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Normally you wouldn't put, if you were getting this at a bar, especially a nicer bar, you would not be putting blueberries or these cherries in it. That is, I saw them sitting around, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this right now. You might see that a little bit more, some of the Arlington spots that are doing closer to smashes, things like that. But I didn't feel like I had any garnish, so I felt like I needed to throw some kind of garnish in there. So.
Awesome, man. It's cool.
Yeah. So you get everyone, you know, pour your drink, have a sip. Any questions?
Thoughts? I want to know how people feel about the drink. Nice.
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want.
I am loving the blueberries in an old fashioned. I'm going to do that from now on.
Crazy.
I think I went a little light on the agave, so it was started a little strong, so added a little more, but it's good.
What whiskeys did you guys use?
I used Maker's Mark.
Okay.
Same, Maker's Mark.
Yeah. Rittenhouse over there. Nice rye.
Love Rittenhouse. Oh, we got a little High West there. The double rye.
Didn't go wrong.
Yeah,
Didn't go
it
wrong.
is.
Yeah, High West is great.
That's a great whiskey. I love that stuff.
Just an observation. I like that you reinforced the idea of using different types of sweeteners. I'd actually been using an aged maple syrup that my friend sells at his distillery in
Yes.
yeah, in Hyattsville. But I had this falernum syrup, and I tried this for the first time. It's actually, I think I might even prefer that. It's quite tasty.
Yep. It's an old
Can
fashioned.
you put the name of the syrup you just said and then also your friend's distillery in the chat?
Yeah.
So just
B.G. Reynolds Falernum. Oh, cool.
They make a whole line. They all make a whole line of different cocktail syrups.
They're in Hyattsville.
a quick little shortcut. If you want to have like a smoked old fashioned, you can use a smoked maple syrup, and it'll give you that smokiness and the sweetness at the same time.
In the chat.
What about, I feel like I've seen people like a smoky flavor, maybe even sort of like light, like the orange.
Yeah, they do that.
Lightly do that.
The other thing that y'all can do if you want is there's other multiple versions of this, but you can get a smoker. These are about 20 to 30 bucks on Amazon. So what you do is you take wood chips like these. So these are from Breville, which is, there are other places that make it too, but these are the perfect consistency I found, and they're not that much difference in price. You put it right in here, and you turn on a fan, or you light it right here. It's basically a whiskey bong, for lack of a better term. And you turn on the fan, the air will suck it through and eject the smoke right into your glass. So you'll see this at a lot of places. You put a little bowl over it, Ziploc, whatever you want to do, and you can really smoke the glass first. That's one way to do it. The other way to do a smoked drink, and hell, we can do this if we have time later, I don't care, is you put the drink in some kind of container once it's made, and you can smoke it that way. Yeah. I've seen it done both ways. Gravitas, when I was over there this weekend, they're lighting a fire on a cedar plank, and they're putting the glass on top of it and smoking it that way, and that puts out the fire, and also really gets a nice cedar flavor into the glass. glass is a really good receptor of the flavor there. But you can also do it the other way, where you could put the smoke up a little thing and put over any kind of dome. So you could use like a like sweet green kind of metal bowl and just put it over it, smoke it, and then put that in, just leave it there for a minute or two. That's going to give you a really hardcore smoky flavor too. So depends what you're looking to do.
What are your guys' thoughts on like the sweetener? Like I kind of think we were recommended to get potentially agave, and so I use like a organic blue agave nectar, which I don't know if it's just, that's not that sweet, but what are your thoughts on the sweetener ingredient?
I personally really like agave. It's a little bit thicker. So when you're putting it and doing it that 1-to-1 ratio, or doing it close to that, you might even, I've also seen places, I think, actually see you might want to go more on the agave side. I have to go back and look at my notes. We can get that over to you, because normally it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but there's something about agave that you change it up a little bit. And I think it's probably due to the density of agave. It's just so much different than the density of, it's pretty thick there. I like it. Honey is another great one to use, because what I'm really looking for in the syrup is how can I add additional notes into it instead of making it just sweet. And one of the ways of doing that is by you're bringing floral elements into that. So what local honey is one way you could go. Maple is another way you can go. All those different things are going to have something that's just a little bit more unique to give it a little bit more flavor and different and taste as you're going through the, smelling it, tasting it, finishing, all that different stuff.
Do you have any thoughts on how long, for convenience, or if you want to do like a custom infusion, if you want to make your own simple syrup, right? Do you have any guidelines on how long it should keep in the refrigerator? I know how long I've kept it. I also know how long I've read on websites, and they're not the same. Okay.
Mine is significantly longer. Brocky, what do you think?
I keep mine until I'm finished with them.
That's what I've done.
So,
that pace could vary quite highly.
I've kept mine for a month or two easy. And it's so easy to make. If you do it in a small container, it's not a problem. But I think you're easily good 2 months. It's not exactly what they're recommending on the website. It's in the buyer beware. My fridge is a little bit colder, but there's the whole bigger topic of like how often we throw out stuff in the U.S. out of concerns of things spoiling. And my personal opinion is that we're a little bit on the aggressive side.
yes, we are.
That and we contribute to too much food waste. But that's a bigger topic for another day that I'm not an expert in.
And official recommendations are always going to be more conservative because they don't want to be liable for anything. So.
I asked mainly because one of the other things we've been using lately a good amount of for things like margaritas is orgeat syrup. Mm-hmm. And we like it so much, I've been thinking about making some of my own, but it's a lot of almonds, and it's like, is it worth making? How much that'll keep for how long, right? So it's just it's kind of a cost benefit.
I think you're probably in better shape. The problem gets to be when you leave things out overnight. You go out, you have a couple cocktails, you forget to put something away at the end of the night. It's sitting out on your countertop, and things start to ferment or things change.
I showed you the baby bottle. It's funny you think we're going out.
We're not out, but what I mean by leaving things, no one's going out anymore. So that game's done. So we're putting that aside, and with all due respect to our great friends in the community, in the guilds out there who are busting their butt to, allow people to have some semblance of normalcy, and are putting, frankly, their lives at risk to do that. So cheers and l'chaim to them. Much respect. But with that aside, people get drunk and they leave things out on a countertop, and that does happen. And like, if there are things that can spoil, especially things that have like sugar and other stuff like that, and that just be mindful of it. If you left it out for a couple of days, I don't know how that's going to change versus like you left it out for 3 hours and no one cares. That's the bigger deal than whether you kept it in the fridge.
And just a note, I go with the I prefer the brown sugar. simple syrup, but I make all types of simple syrups, like the normal stuff. If you can find passion fruit, that makes a really good simple syrup. If you get yourself some basil and strawberries, strawberry basil simple syrup with some white rum and fresh lemon juice, makes an amazing lemonade. So I go crazy with the simple syrups, and I tend, like, typically when there's just sugar and water, they last longer than the ones with fruit in them. So
what kind of proportion of the aromatics or other flavors are you using? So like the passion fruit one you mentioned, my wife and I's eyes perked up at that. So like if you're doing like 2 cups water, 2 cups sugar, like how much passion fruit are you adding to that then?
Well, to be honest, I only found passion fruit at one place around here, at Wegmans. By the job I used to have.
Wegmans is the shit.
Exactly. And I grew up with Wegmans. I'm from Rochester, New York. I grew up with Danny Wegmans from my town. You're from Rochester too? So
I'm from the New York area, but no, yeah.
So I just took a couple of passion fruits and just gutted them out and put the guts inside and let it boil with the sugar and water. And then I strained them when everything dissolved, strained into a bottle, and that was it. So it's just up to your comfort level. You know, if you feel like you want to put more flavor, you put more passion fruit in there. If not, then just use a couple of them. But it's amazing though. I made my own cocktail off of that. I can share that too with you guys. You know, in the chat or something like that. Gin-based cocktail. It's amazing. The passion fruit simple syrup. But anyway, I digress. Should I start talking more now? Should I stop that talk and start talking more?
Go for it.
Yeah. So the question I would have is, should we spend a couple more minutes drinking this so everyone can enjoy and make the next cocktail, or should we just kick straight into yours? Go
for it. I mean, I'm gonna tell a quick short story. Oh, you made your old fashioned up, Elizabeth. Nice. Okay.
We finished them already. They're gone. They're long gone. I was just saying we're ready to move on.
All right, great. Let's go then.
Okay, cool. So I am Brocky, owner, host of Whiskey and Kicks. It's a YouTube-based show. Follow me on YouTube, please, Whiskey and Kicks. And I'm on Instagram at The Whiskey and Kicks Show. And what I do is basically I get out and interview bartenders, distillers, everybody in the industry of booze. And we talk about the math, the science, the blood, sweat, and tears that go behind your favorite cocktails. And there is a lot of all of those things. So as John kind of alluded to, you know, the math, right? The ratios and the science of what, you know, smells and tastes good together and so on and so forth. I'm trying to bring those things to the camera, to the screen, so everybody could say, wow, you know, I've been ordering my favorite drink from Fridays all these years, and I didn't know that so much went into a vodka and cranberry juice. I'm just joking. So I just want to tell, just to give the African-American perspective, it's a little short historical piece that I wanted to share with you guys. It's about a gentleman named Nathan Green. Nathan Green was born in Maryland, which I found out doing my research, and it's unknown how he ended up in Lynchburg, Tennessee, but he ended up there. He was a slave. Nathan Green was a slave who was known for his distilling skills. He distilled whiskey like a lot of people back then. So I'm gonna make this long story short, but you guys can look it up later on, because I can talk all night, and that's not good for this, right? So around this time when he's distilling, there was a reverend in the neighborhood or in the area. His name was Dan Call. Dan Call was a reverend, and he also distilled whiskey on the side. So, you know, he had this thing going. Well, Dan Call's congregation kind of approached him and said, hey, you got to give this whiskey thing up. You know, you got to concentrate on the church, give this whiskey thing up. And he's like, okay, but he's really like, I'm not giving this whiskey thing up. So he finds this Nathan Green, who his nickname was Nearest Green. So people called him Uncle Nearest. He finds this slave, and Dan Call himself is not on record for ever owning slaves. So the belief is that he leased Nathan Green as a slave to come to his property and to run his distillery. So he kept the whiskey pumping. He's over there preaching and doing his church thing, and he's got the whiskey pumping. He's still making money off of it, right? So once the Civil War was going on this time. Once the Civil War ended, Nathan Green, Uncle Nearest, decided to stay there and work doing this, distilling stuff and whatnot. So over time, his whiskey became well known in the surrounding areas outside of Lynchburg, Tennessee, and many believe that he mastered this technique called the Lincoln County process, which refers to the use of sugar maple charcoal to filter new make whiskey before aging. So that's where you get your Tennessee whiskeys. The Tennessee whiskeys had this charcoal filtration process that they use, and that's the Lincoln County process. He became the first Black master distiller in the United States. And on record, this young child approaches him, and he takes this child in. He teaches this child how to distill. That child's name was Jack Daniel. So Nathan Green, Uncle Nearest, the first Black distiller in the United States, taught Jack Daniel how to distill whiskey. Years later, which is maybe about 3 years ago or so, this story came out, and this woman named Fawn Weaver went and bought this gigantic property in Tennessee, and she started a distillery there, and she calls it Uncle Nearest, the Uncle Nearest Distillery out in Tennessee. They have a few offerings. This is not a commercial. I just like this stuff, and this goes with my story. So Uncle Nearest whiskey is really good. Clearly, I love it, and I also have a good relationship with them. So, but I love this stuff. It's great Tennessee whiskey. I have an affinity for Tennessee whiskey. It's really, really good. I don't know if they told you guys I was going to talk about this ahead of time, because I wanted you guys to make this cocktail without Tennessee whiskey, and then maybe try to experiment with Tennessee whiskey later on. Maybe it's Uncle Nearest, maybe it's something else. Who knows? It's up to you. But this distillery is doing really well now, and they're honoring this man whose history was forgotten or left behind, and they actually are sending all of his descendants to college from freshman year all the way through grad school for free, based off of the profit that they make with this whiskey. So it's pretty awesome.
That's very cool. I have a question, Brocky. Did the woman who started the distillery, did she have any relation to Uncle Nearest?
No, she's a Black woman, and she just heard this story like all of us. And I guess she has money though. That's the difference between her and me. So she has money, and she looked into it, and she just found and dug up more information, and did her research, and then she wanted to do this. And
that's so cool.
She has partners, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, she started this distillery up, and it's doing great. They're all over the place. So, yep. I'm not an expert on this, but if anyone has questions, I can answer them if I know them. If not, then we all have Google. We can do that.
Is there a certain taste that defines like a Tennessee whiskey?
Yes. If you drink Tennessee whiskey, you'll notice, so with a bourbon, you're gonna have a sweeter taste because of the corn. With rye, you're gonna have a spicier finish, a spicier taste. But with Tennessee whiskey, it's really, I really don't know how, I can't really grasp it. This charcoal filtration thing that they have, these are not my only Tennessee whiskeys. The other ones that I have too, it's the same kind of taste, but different. So you just have to try it to if you can explain it, please contact me and let me know, because I can't. I don't really know what it is, but I do love it though. Anything else? So the cocktail that I want to make is the Boulevardier. Have anyone heard of the Boulevardier before? Okay, cool. So I wanted to make this cocktail once John told me that he was making an old fashioned, because the old fashioned is sweet. Boulevardier is bitter. But so I'll tell you more in a little bit. So everyone have their ingredients for the Boulevardier around? All right, so let's get it started. So I typically don't make drinks sitting down, but I'm gonna try this out and see how it goes. So I'm gonna move my camera down so you can see what I'm doing. Is everyone mixing in just the drinking glass? Okay, cool. because I typically would mix in the mixing glass, but we'll use a drinking glass since, you know, we're doing this for this. So we're doing 1 ounce of whiskey.
And Brock, do you have a preference for rye or bourbon on this, or?
Typically, when I make my Boulevardier, I use bourbon, but I prefer bourbon over rye, period. But today I'm playing around and using Uncle Nearest Tennessee whiskey. So, you know, play around a little bit. Maybe it'll taste great. Maybe I'll hate it. Who knows? But it's all about experimentation. 1 ounce of Campari. Campari is beautiful, people. Get yourself some Campari. It is a great aperitif. Everybody doing good? Cool. And then we have the sweet vermouth. Sweet vermouth. 1 ounce. This is a 1-1-1 ratio cocktail. All right. All right. So add your ice. I have a block of ice here that I'm going to use. So yeah, big block of ice real quick. Don't make a mess. I'll use my spoon to drop it into my cocktail. And then give it a stir. So you want to stir your cocktail. Typically I use a mixing glass, but we're gonna stir it. You can't really see that, so I'm just gonna turn this back up. I'm gonna stir it. Typically I stir it until my hand freezes to the glass. Like that's what I was told by the bartenders. Stir until your hand freezes to the glass. Not literally, of course, but very, very cold. So get some good stirs in until the outside of your glass starts getting really cold. Everybody all right? Cool. So don't drink it yet. Wait a minute, y'all. Don't drink it yet. We gotta talk a little bit before we drink this. All right, mine is pretty cold. All right, let's set that to the side. Everyone have an orange? So you wanna get an orange, a slice of the peel, not the actual orange. Just get us a nice slice of the peel. Just like that. So with the orange peel, you want to, with the peel part out, express it, squeeze it over the top of the cocktail, right? Now, I didn't believe this, but if you look down into your cocktail, you should be able to see the oils floating on the top of the cocktail. And to take it a step further from what John was saying, what I learned is take the outside of your peel after you do that, and not only rub it on the rim, but rub it all the way on the outside of the glass. Because when you're handling this glass while you're drinking the cocktail, you're gonna get that orange scent on your fingers. You're gonna be talking to people, you're gonna be, you know, whatever, messing with your face. That essence, that orange smell is gonna contribute to how the cocktail tastes. Rub it around the rim too, and then drop it inside. And you have yourself a Boulevardier at that point. Now, what I learned about the Boulevardier is that it's really 2 or 3 cocktails in one, right? When you taste it right now, it's bitter. But as this cocktail sits and the ice dilutes a little bit, and you're chilling, you're talking to people, when you come back to the cocktail, it's gonna taste a little bit sweeter. It's gonna change complexion as you're sitting. So cheers, everyone. Hope you guys got yours together. Cheers.
It's a really pretty color.
It is. It's lovely. I love this cocktail. Yes, yes. For me, it really bounces between the old fashioned and the Boulevardier is what my favorite is. I mean, this is a great cocktail. The bartender that taught me how to make it, he has a Boulevardier tattooed on his leg.
Wow. That is dedication.
Yes. Yep. That's it.
I assume now people might have questions for.
Sure, yeah.
It's one question I had. You gave some great context in terms of like some history. I guess when both the old fashioned and even this drink, I mean, I really sipping it, like I think of like Mad Men and like late 1950s, early 60s. Is there a reason that's the case? Was there something about these drinks, especially in old fashioned, that may have made them more popular then? And has there been kind of a resurgence in drinks from that era, given Mad Men's popularity and impact on pop culture?
Well, John can talk to this too probably, but I'm not sure about the Boulevardier. There's a story behind it, but with the old fashioned and some of those cocktails like the Manhattan, you go back to Prohibition time, right? So Prohibition time, these cocktails were the to-do, and they, from what I understand, that died for a while, and then there was a major resurgence and whatnot. I don't know what lends to that, but I know it exists. There's a major resurgence as far as Prohibition style cocktails, which is pretty much all I prefer.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as we all know, the whiskey boom has been lasting for years now. But yeah, I don't have the specifics and whatnot, why the resurgence came about or why those cocktails are so popular. But maybe because they're delicious. Maybe that's it.
Yeah,
that's a good reason.
I think Mad Men, has contributed to the lore of whiskey drinking in a positive way, in some respects. One of the things that people don't realize.
Positive way? Did you watch that show?
Well, no, I mean, like, people look at it and they're drinking more whiskey. And actually, I didn't watch that show. So, no. But like, people would have like Mad Men parties and they'd go drink whiskey. And that's a positive thing for people who are selling whiskey. Whether it is positive as far as the images that it portrayed, that's not what I'm saying. Especially if it's going to be posted on the web. But what people don't realize as far as whiskey goes is bourbons in the 1980s, I think, the 90s and 2000s, the early, was not doing too hot. So there was a lot of places that were, in some financial trouble. There was questions about how much whiskey they really needed. And then there was this global resurgence. Started, I don't have an exact date, but somewhere in the 2010s. One of the main turning points that people look for the international whiskeys is this guy that writes something called the Whiskey Bible. Not in the Old Testament, but it is well known. Sorry for the bad joke. But he named a Japanese whiskey. It was the Suntory Sherry cask. I forget the exact year. It might have been 2014, 2012, somewhere around then. And that started this huge boom of Japanese whiskeys. And then all these other whiskeys started to really take off as well. I see it looks like you have Kavalan over your right shoulder there on the bar, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
That's the soloist or it's one of those.
I haven't tried it yet. I'm gonna preview this. I'm gonna review this next week. So I got.
Yeah, if it's one of the I don't know which exact version it is, but that's a very, very well-renowned one. There's a number of really, really great Asian whiskeys with the explosion. That Sabiki, is that the Harmony or?
This is the Suntory. This is the Japanese Harmony.
Yeah. So there's all this great stuff that's going on in Japan. You have two main, basically branches of whiskey that are the two main things. You have the Suntory brand. Suntory may be best known for Bill Murray in his movie. And then you have the Nika brand, and Nika, from what I remember, and this, I could be wrong about this, is that he learned from the Suntory and then went off and started his own. That's probably a complete, not perfect summary of what happened there. Without turning this into drunk history, me going off on the wrong thing. But you have some really great whiskeys there. I have a decent stash behind me of between the Nika, the coffee malt, coffee grain, some of those you see around here. And there's just this huge explosion of different whiskeys. And from there, it's expanded out, and there's been this huge resurgence in whiskey and bottled and bond whiskey and barrel proof whiskey, which is whiskey that comes out of the barrel at proof. And what are your thoughts on that, on the barrel proof scene?
The barrel proof scene is my scene. I love barrel proof whiskey.
Do you want to explain to everyone what barrel proof is, just so for those who aren't aware?
It's basically what he said. It's coming out of the barrel at a cask strength. So the strength of this whiskey is gonna be stronger than your typical whiskey. For instance,
I can grab one in a second if you.
Here's a Four Roses I just picked up recently, right? So this is a single barrel. So that means it was only in one barrel. It doesn't move from one to the other. It's not blended with other whiskeys. Someone went around to test their whiskeys out, and when they pulled this out, they put it into a little thing, they tasted it, and they said, this is it. Like, let's bottle this up and put it out there. So, and typically the proof is stronger. This is 123.2 proof. This one. So, you're gonna get stronger proof. So it's a beautiful thing. It's strong, but you can still sip it neat, or you can sip it with a piece of ice, or you can just sip it neat and just add a drop of water to it, and it changes the complexion a little bit and makes it a little bit easier. Sometimes I like to use barrel proof whiskeys for like my Manhattans. I like to go up in strength with my Manhattans, not with my old fashions. But yeah, so I don't know. That's a whole barrel proof thing. I love the higher proof whiskeys. It's my thing.
Yeah, and then one of the things that we should, I guess, tell everyone real quick is who here is familiar with what makes something a bourbon? Because there's one misconception that I keep hearing from friends when I ask them.
You know what that is?
Yeah, we'll see what our crowd says here.
So I'm going to assume you're going to say. I'm going to assume you're going to say that if it can't be a bourbon unless it's from Kentucky is the misconception.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So, what does make?
You know the three things that make something a bourbon? Why we have you not to put you on
the type of grain. The type of grain. It's the.
So I can speak to that.
Hey.
Yeah. Jump in.
I'm having internet issues. So it has to be. Oh. So I was going to say, we justify drinking bourbon in law school by going over the labeling rules. So it has to be over 50% plus one corn. This has to be American and has to be in new charred white oak barrels.
Yeah. I got nothing to throw into that. You nailed that. So
50% corn, American, new charred oak.
I believe the minor addition, and everything you said was completely right, is there are proof requirements on bourbon. I think it's somewhere between 86-ish, which is, I know, the 84 or something like that, and then it goes up to what, 140, 133, 135, something like that.
Yeah, it must be distilled to a maximum of 80% ABV, alcohol by volume, which is 160 proof. It has to enter the barrel at no more than 125 proof. It enters the barrel that way. It must be filled at no less than 40% ABV, which is 80 proof in a bottle. No less than 80 proof. No artificial coloring can be added. and flavoring can be added to the barrel. So.
Yeah. I didn't know that you could have barrel finished bourbons until recently. That was something I learned.
Oh yeah, so you can take a bourbon and put it into a rum barrel or put it into a wine barrel. Angel's Envy is big on that. They have multiple offerings. Bowman Brothers are big with that. They put their bourbon into beer barrels. So yeah, and it makes some really good stuff. Right? Everybody was kind of hard on Angel's Envy back in the day, but now everyone's trying to do it. So it's the thing, and it's really got some good juice. So
Angel's Envy Finished Rye is my single favorite whiskey right now.
It's a beautiful whiskey.
Yeah,
it's so freaking good.
It's delicious.
I have the Rabbit Hole sherry finished cask, and that's one of my favorites right now. That's mostly findable. I mean, it's a teeny bit hard to find, but for the most part, you can grab it. But that's one of the mid-sized distilleries out of Louisville that I really like.
I just have one more question for Rocky and Robin. What time next week are we doing this? No, it's not.
Not planned, but good to know that you are into the cocktail scene. Maybe we'll have some more stuff up the pipeline.
That's awesome. I'm glad that everybody have a good time. I hope so. Yeah, look me up, please. Whiskey and Kicks, man. I appreciate you guys.
Hey, Rocky, I want to just really thank you, Rocky. Just really thank you for coming and joining us. I know this isn't it's a smaller scene. It's not what everyone does on the same day, but really appreciate you taking time out of your evening and coming and joining us and sharing your knowledge, especially the story about Tennessee whiskey. That was really amazing, and I really appreciate that.
For
I wanted
sure.
to thank you.
I appreciate it, and I mean, no, there's no better place I could have been than right here today. So I'm happy to be here, and I enjoy this. I have passion for this, and I love people, and we've been stuck in the house, so it's great to be able to interact with people and and share the things that I've learned from these bartenders and these guys out here. I've learned a lot of stuff. So share knowledge. That's what you're supposed to do, and drink whiskey. That's it.
Please, both you and John, send us all the recommendations on the whiskeys that you made tonight. They were very helpful.
You guys, whatever you want.
If you guys send them to me, I'll pass them along. Thank you so much. This was really great.
It was a good time.
Thank you guys, and go Caps, and hopefully this is not the last game of the season. So yeah.
Have a good night, everybody. Keep your eyes open for some more event announcements soon.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.